Hello and welcome to the Wolf Den Podcast, your home for competitive Digimon TCG discussion and news. I'm your host Nako, joined by my co-host Zenitsu, and today we'll be talking about the results from the August 13th webcam Digimon regionals, both the Carta Magica and Topcut, as well as I'll be going over a brief breakdown of my recent store championship that I won yesterday, which is why this podcast episode is a little late. And then Zenitsu and I are just kind of going to break down the BT9 metagame and where we see it now that we both have a significant amount of more hands-on experience with the format.
So, going over the quick breakdown, starting with top cuts, there was a pretty decent spread for top cuts, top results. So, first place we have Alphamon, second place we have Goemon slash Blackwork Greymon, third place we have Metal Guru, fourth place we have Metal Guru, fifth place Armor Rush, sixth place Alphamon, seventh place D Reaper, eighth place Metal Guru, ninth place Security Control, 10th place Goemon, 11th place D Brigades, 12th place D Reaper again, 13th place Armor Rush, 14th Grandis, 15th Metal Guru, and 16th Goemon. So as far as the big breakdown goes, there was about 8 different decks present in top 16, which is pretty good. 4 of them were Metal Guru, 3 of them were Goemon, 2 of them were Alphamon, 2 of them were D Reapers, 2 of them were Armor Rush, 1 Security Control, 1 D Brigade, and 1 Grandis. So a pretty healthy spread. Nothing too crazy outside of the D Brigades. That's something that really it's been on people's minds and people really like the deck, but it hasn't presented itself with any real results in a while. And I think like the big inclusion that really makes D Brigades like playable is DeathX-mon. That's like the big new tool that they got because looking at this D Reaper or not D Reaper D Brigade list, actually this one's not even running any. It's just hardcore aggro, like hardcore aggro with a few good security threats, and sometimes security just matters quite a lot. And then flipping over to Carta Magica, which is what I competed in, and I just bubbled out of top 16. I ended up getting 34th place if anyone's interested. I could have actually made top 16. Salty little tidbit here. I could have made top 16 had I paid attention to the clock. Not like trying to double down or enforce or say that I needed to slow play, just slow down the pace of the game, and I could have forced a draw, and then I would have made it into top 16. But that's neither here nor there. So first place was Metal Guru, second place was Metal Guru, third place was Metal Guru, fourth place was D Reaper, fifth place we see D Brigade popping up again, sixth place Metal Guru, seventh place Alphamon, eighth place Grandis, ninth place D Brigade again, 10th place Metal Guru, 11th place, which is the person who I lost to, which is Armor Rush, 12th place Imperial, 13th place Goemon, 14th place Goemon, 15th Metal Guru, and 16th Yellow-Red Hybrid. So there was one extra deck present in the top 16 compared to the other one, but it's pretty similar in terms of results. And again, the only real new outlier was not only just red yellow hybrids, but it was more D Brigades showing up. So I guess aggro is good.
Yeah. Um, Something about the consistency of D Brigade, just their ability to slam bodies. People aren't really running like super wide removal because there really isn't any reason for it too much. Um and so only one of the 3 lists even runs DeathX, and it's only running 1 copy. So it's kind of just running the D Brigade lists that were pretty well known from like way back. The more, I guess, common slash notable inclusion is they're all running copies of Kazu, the EX2 Black Tamer. Start of your main phase, if you have a cyborg or machine, gain one memory, and then when a Digimon with Cyborg or Machine becomes suspended, you can draw one, then trash one. Which all the Commandramons are cyborgs, so it just consistency, right? Like if you're constantly cycling in a rookie rush style deck, you're not at risk of drawing to death via that.
No, and especially since you have Darkdramon, which helps refill your deck, so you're actually never afraid of decking out, and then Kazu helps give you memory. So it's just a very, very smart card to include in all D-Brigade decks. On top of the fact that like D-Brigades also have the BT4 Commandramon, which helps replace himself. So you also have sticky bodies as well as just being able to go wide super easily. And then you just, yeah, like you said, it's not running anything new or crazy. DeathX is a good card. I thought more decks were actually playing DeathX, considering in Japan a lot of those play DeathX, but that's,
Oh, that's fine.
yeah, that shows the difference between our format and how we're playing and our approach compared to Japanese format and how they approach. And with control decks on the downfall, like there's just not a whole lot of control decks doing very well right now. It just does let these types of decks like breathe inside of this meta.
Yeah. I mean, if this was one format ago and Yellow Hybrid was running around with Shine or with Rapidmon, this deck never tops. If it plays against it at least, you know. Like just one Rapidmon probably locks you out of the game if you're playing this deck. Which, you know, takes advantage of the gap in the meta right now, so
Because everything is just, for the most part, hold something decent in raising, play your search tools, and then just move out when you're ready to combo or just aggress extra hard. And like, if that's the type of game plan a lot of these decks are doing, then it just leaves room for these low to the ground aggro decks to like actually do well, especially since a lot of these decks don't have huge security threats. So like they could swing pretty safely into the opponent's security. Sure, their Digimon might die, but like they're not afraid of like a mass board removal or like, oh, I hit a Gaia Force that's super devastating. No, it's like they hit a Gaia Force and they just move to the next Commandramon. Like it doesn't matter to them.
yeah. Um that as well as because they don't need to run too many Digimon or they don't care as much what those Digimon are, they all get they get to run a large suite of black option cards, which black has some of the better option removal now, especially I guess in this meta. Um, Mostly because D-Digivolve isn't stopped by any form of current safety at all. Iron Fisted gets around everything that isn't Alphamon. Um, at least you know it forces Melga X to use its protection, but yeah, it's basically it just looks like it's a pretty consistent, decidedly aggressive deck that um and I guess I can see where it potentially stole spots from something like an Armor Rush because while it needs to see certain pieces to flow, it it has a lot of cycle with its, you know, whenever something becomes suspended, draw one, trash one, filling up its trash to slam Darkdramon pretty early. Nanimon comes out of security and plays itself. This one I'm looking at right now also runs 4 copies of Korjamon to draw, playing itself from security. Um, and then 4 copies of Pride Memory Boost.
I mean, Pride Memory Boost makes sense because you're mostly just looking to play your Commandramons off of it. So, like, if you're. Because 2 of the Commandramons are also 4 costs. So, if it's
Yep.
just looking for 4 cost and below, it hits all of your Commandramons, and you don't care which one it hits, as long as it's getting
And all your
something.
rookies too,
Right, all the
because
other rookies. Because you're
it
also
also
playing
runs.
Hagurumon because that's more
Yep,
cyborg synergy. Because it's like, oh,
more
just
cycle.
yeah, it's more cycling, even though it's net zero in terms of like card advantage. What it does is still just good enough because it's filling up your trash, cycling through your deck, having a body on field. Like it's just a good, wholesome deck, and that's kind of why it did well. And if we noticed in the meta, we saw less Wargreymon X's, and more Goemons this time, and I think Goemon is just a little bit better than War Greymon X. It kind of pains me to say that, but if you're trying to play that Greymon tribal, Goemon is a little bit better because War Greymon X isn't the easiest deck to OTK with. So, like, I don't necessarily consider that a hardcore OTK deck just because you need to see very, very specific pieces. And if Goemon kind of just has the same type of damage output and you're not relying on seeing specific pieces, then might as well just deal with less damage for an overall better package on trying to control and deal with the opponent's field, because Black War Greymon can deal with Tamers. That's a huge aspect because a lot of people are hard playing Tamers to try to set something up, and if you're picking those Tamers apart, that's huge. Plus, he has a little bit more flexibility in terms of the cards that he's working with, because you could run the red low end, the black low end, the red black low end. Like, there's just a lot of different things, but I think a lot of people are just more decidedly going with the red low end, using the Greymon X stuff, just because the protection is what was needed to be able to have the deck be extra threatening.
I don't want to detract from the statement you just made because all of that's very valid and very well thought out. But what I was mostly thinking about that whole time is I definitely don't read that as Goemon. And while no one's like ever said that's not Goemon, it looks way more like Gaiomon or
It's
Gaomon.
Gaiomon. I don't know.
I'm just
I
like
just
we
say
haven't gotten a
Goey.
comment yet, and I've been like, am I wrong? Have I been saying it wrong this whole time?
Look,
Because
I gave up on
GAIO doesn't say Goey to me.
Look, I gave up on a lot of pronunciations because, like, some of them are just really dumb, and I think there was a translation that they could have used instead of Gaiobon. But I've just always called him Goey for, like, the comedic value of it because I know it's wrong. So it's like, might as well
Okay,
go full
that's
down on the wrongness.
that's relevant. As long as you're doing it on purpose, that makes sense.
Oh,
Um,
100%. Like in videos, I try to do it correctly. And sometimes it does come out a little awkward, and then I'm like, oh, oops, oh well.
so you did touch upon one of like the things I wanted to really get into in a bit. Um, since we have more experience with the meta, I was just gonna take like the early section, just to like break down my store champ, get it out of the way, and then really like because we could potentially talk about this topic for the rest of the episode. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, um, yep. Think I already said it, but I won my store championship yesterday. Um, undefeated playing D Reaper. Um, I wasn't planning on playing D Reaper until basically 5 minutes before the event had started. Um, Zenitsu and I had practiced Alphamon for me a decent bit the day before, and even though I have a list I'm pretty comfortable with, I don't think the list needed any tweakings. Um, I just didn't really feel like I could get over that wall, the speed of execution that he kept coming at me with Melga. And so I didn't feel confident. Like he basically I think just beat me 3 or 4 like sets in a row, and then we're like, oh, okay, well I gotta go to bed. Thanks for the help, I guess. Like beating me 4 times in a row. Um, and then I got home from work the next day, and like when I was packing up my stuff, I had ordered a third DeathX-mon to play with just any control deck or whatever I would need in the future because I only had 2, and it came in the mail that day, and I was like, well, crap. Every list I had seen was running 3 DeathX-mon, and I ran 2 on Saturday, and I did okay. I dropped when I got my third loss, so I was like 2 and 3, but um, I didn't really feel like the deck. I did great with it, and then when I got the third DeathX-mon, I was like, okay, maybe I want to try it out now. Driving there, I didn't really know what the hell I was gonna play, and then I sat down right before the event had started, and I was just running test hands with Alpha, like against a Phantom opponent, and I just kept running out of searchers, or I kept finding myself in like a really awkward play, like do I just Digivolve over Dorumon for into the Dex Dorugor? Like, that's really bad, or I'd have a situation where I don't have any dexes, and then like the 2 or 3 cool boys I had just wouldn't do anything. I was like, ah, this is, you know what, screw it. I'll just stupid play D Reaper because at least I've played that in a tournament setting before, and am slightly more familiar with its mechanics. Um, you know, I guess when pressed to make competitive decisions, because I'd only played Alpha for fun or against myself. Um, and I really kind of thought that was wrong, but I guess it wasn't because I know I qualified for nationals with it. But um, so round one um was actually probably my most difficult round as far as decision making was concerned. I played against Armor Rush, um, and I just know it was potentially fate or um, otherwise because I remember checking my phone and I had a message from Zenitsu that just said make sure you shuffle well, and I opened up zero searchers in my starting hand. Um, actually, Zenitsu, this you could just jump in with questions or comments whenever you want because I don't need to be like talking to myself here. We don't need to be.
I mean, like, so I coaxed him to try to play D Reapers. I knew he was more comfortable on the deck. I'm just like, you have the third DeathX-mon, just play what you are more comfortable with, which ended up being D Reapers. And then I messaged him obviously at the start to make sure he shuffles well because I realized it real quick, even just in my Metal Guru deck, clumping is huge when you're digging and searching a lot. So making sure that your cards are spread out as much as possible um, is how I kind of try to deal with the whole bricking situation on top of like the deck does doing what it needs to be doing. But like I think D Reapers has a pretty good Armor Rush matchup because once you get into Gatekeeper, the game is over. Like they have very little ways to efficiently get rid of Gatekeeper, and if you just have the Gatekeeper set up, there's like literally nothing that they can do. It's like what they fire rocket to deal one damage. They mega death the Gatekeeper that you then just play again. Like you just sit on Gatekeeper and you just almost auto win if you get to that stage. Which sometimes if they're floundering, you can D Reapers. We talked about before. The speed because of X antibody just helps immensely.
Yeah, it's something I definitely discredited initially. I remember I genuinely thought that D Reaper when it won that first event was like a fluke. I was like, yeah, it's a random in-person event. Somebody won with D Reapers, like who cares? Um, and I didn't really think the X antibody or the Death X meant that much, especially because even as Zenitsu pointed out, like um I know there are some rumors, like not rumors, like there's people are like speculating on what things may get hit in the now confirmed. This as of this Friday will be the Japanese ban announcement, ban slash restriction announcement. Um, and the talk I've seen around has either been Sunrise Buster or DeathX-mon, and none of the OTK decks run it because the DeathX-mon is to counter the OTK decks and or like go wide decks. Um, that just play a bunch of tamers while they set up their pieces and raising. And I was like, well, shit, like, I don't know why I'm sitting here wasting my time worrying about how many DeathX-mon I have when none of these decks are running it. There was at one point, like the first or second event, that didn't include D Reaper, obviously, that none of the top 16 decks had a single copy of DeathX-mon. Like, it just doesn't matter if everyone's in raising and they don't have that many tamers.
Well,
But
the ban announcement is for sorry to detract, but the ban announcement is for
yeah,
the
you're good.
Japanese meta, and
Yep.
Cross Hearts is a very tamer,
Yes.
like go wide tamer heavy deck. So it makes playing Death X a lot easier. Although Death X still doesn't have that much relevancy, because you're still hiding stuff with your tamers, kind of like what Hybrids is doing. So like it still does matter because it makes it easier to play, even though it's not removing as much. It's still just a very strong and oppressive card that is hyper splashable in almost any deck because of the on playability and the cost reduction that goes with it. Which is partially why people are just like, look, go wide strategies are going to, like, using actual Digimon are going to die because of DeathX-mon because they're already playing it for the tamers. Now it just makes decks like D Brigade's almost unplayable because, like, oh, if they're gonna be coming across the table against somebody who's playing Death X to counter Cross Hearts, well, they just naturally also happen to counter my deck as well. Oops.
Yeah. Um, so it counters Cross Hearts decently well. Like obviously Cross Hearts is still the best deck in BT10 and EX3 at the moment. I don't know if the meta will shift too much. I know we're not that deep into the EX3 meta over there. Um, I'll definitely I keep an eye on the time. I'll make sure we have maybe like 20 minutes or so at the end to like go over some our ban predictions and discussions. Um, so yeah, up against Armor Rush round one. Um, I played against exclusively like fairly well-known players from my local area. I know I've mentioned it before, but my locals is pretty cutthroat. I've literally never won locals before, so the fact that I won a store champ is a little hilarious. Um, but um, playing Armor Rush and came out the gate, I had just a booty hand. I'm pretty sure my best I pendulumed, just turned to, it's like pendulum, looking for searcher, and I didn't see one. And then I was like, okay, the first searcher I saw was I think from him hitting my third security. So I was like, oh, I don't think this was supposed to be an order, but somehow it is. Like my deck must have like all the non-searchers I think were together because I think at one point I did count to make sure I had the right number of searchers in there, and apparently they were all in one clump somewhere because I didn't see them. Pretty quick loss game one. Game two, um, I remember it was pretty back and forth. But I'm like 90% sure. Um, Basically what just happened was I got to the sixth source. That I mean, so I know I mentioned like I undervalued it, but I'm pretty sure I won every single game I saw an X anybody option card, like straight up. Like that additional source, especially early and for free, completely changes the context of the game. Like, um, my best turn two, I'm pretty sure is, Searcher, Tuck, Searcher, Bubbles for one because I Tuck an X antibody as well, and now they just have a three source mother on the second turn that they have to deal with, which is pretty unreasonable against a deck that if I get to six sources I win. Then game three, DeathX just saved me because he had a bad hand. He didn't have a terrible hand, but he had a bad hand, and he went wide on me. And then I was just doing the math, and I'm like, I actually just destroy him here if I play DeathX. He had two armors, two armors and a Vmon, and then a tamer. And so I played my DeathX for dirt cheap, and then blew his board. And there's nothing you can do against that. You just lose at that point if you're Armor Rush. So round two, I'm a little bit more proud about, only because I felt like I maybe taught someone a lesson. I don't know. Like, I definitely didn't 100% like do it on purpose, but I played very specifically. So I played into SecCon. And game one took, I think, 35 minutes because my opponent had 3 Karis and a bunch of recovery tools, and at one point I played 2 DeathX from hand for free based on the amount of tamers he had on the field. But the deck, it wasn't taking that long because I was playing slowly. It was because my opponent wouldn't let me play the game because I don't play memory tamers. So I was allotted a singular attack per turn due to the Kari tapping and gaining memory and ending my turn. And I was usually hitting tactical retreats or holy waves, effectively doing nothing. but my opponent couldn't play anything either because I had a DeathX-mon on the field. So if he play a Magna-Angemon, he recovers one and just loses it. So um his turn mostly consisted of like Magna-Angemon, recover one, kill Magna, or Holy Wave, recover one, tapping Mimi to give me two Mimis to give me one memory. I then swing with like Pendulum Feet or a Bubbles or something, and then I hit a Holy Wave, and then he taps two or three Kari, ending my turn. And that lasted for 35 minutes. Eventually, like, he got upset and was like, "Do you have the Reaper or not?" And I said, "Maybe," and I did. But
I
he had
mean,
3 security left, and he just kept recovering, and I could only attack once per turn. You know what? It's not my fault that this isn't ending. You know,
I
if
mean,
he was literally, I had a giant board that I could only attack once per turn.
to interject with, that's kind of why I hate security control. It's just not a fun deck to play against, or not even half the time. It's not even a fun deck to play. It's just grueling and miserable for everyone. And
Yeah, I
at
don't
my
know who
store
was having like
championship,
less fun.
yeah, like at my store championship, there was 2 to 3 security control players, and they all just lost to Alphamon. The one Alphamon player that
Hmm.
was playing Alphamon, and actually no, I lied. One of them lost to Alphamon on round 3, which made it so I faced Alphamon round 4 in the finals, and then the other one lost to Beelstar just because they can't deal damage, and the Sakuya didn't do anything, and it was miserable. Like, no one was doing anything except for the not security control player who is actually playing the game. And I think that's partially why security control is not doing so well. Granted, there was one that topped. Out of all the all of these, there's like
Yeah.
literally one that topped, and it was not at where was it?
Yep.
It was ninth
Ninth
place.
place, top cut.
Yeah. So, like, it's not
This
doing
is almost
well
exactly the
because,
list I played against. I
yeah,
mean, not
it's
that they're super different, but yeah.
so, like, the deck is not doing well because there's too many things that can beat it out, because they are actually attempting to play the game, and usually they're trying to play around security control, which is not a new concept to a lot of like veteran players on how to beat security control. So,
Yeah,
like,
it's been around long enough now that as soon as they play a couple things, like I actually kind of thought it was like a yellow, purple cherubi kind of thing. Because I was like, okay, Kari, okay, Mimi now, like, and then Salamon, okay, like now I kind of know what this is, especially like after the first Flame Hell Scythe, um, that killed a Searcher before I could tuck it. Um, but so basically, I learned game one because it was very long. I learned many things in game one. One, I'm only allowed to attack once per turn, usually hitting a source of recovery. Two, my opponent can't really do anything, especially because I hit the point where Flame Hell Scythe wouldn't even kill anything because just the plus 1,000 DP on my turn was enough to where, okay, you have 10 cards in hand. My Bubbles is currently 15k DP. You do nothing. Um, and then so he had 3 security remaining. I finally had like a wide enough board and enough memory to where, because again, like every single turn for a while, I was only allowed one swing because obviously he would tap all of his Karis on the first instance of me breaking his security. Um, and he gave me enough memory from something to actually let me attack with my full board once. So I was like, okay, let's Reaper, and the first card was Chaos Deck. So I was like, oh crap, do I lose now? Like this would be so painful. But again, he had no means of actually dealing damage because I'm pretty sure he ran like exclusively Salamon as his rookie. So that's 4 security. Where's the fifth one? So I just had 1 security for the rest of the game. He couldn't do anything because everything he played, I had two DeathX-mon out with a third in hand in case he had a DeathX-mon. Um, and yeah, it was rough. And then game two was basically the same thing, except because he kind of like was like yelling at me. He was like, "Oh, do you have the Reaper or not? Just play Reaper, dude. Swing with Reaper." And then like I just didn't swing with Reaper game two. I'll chip one. I'll chip one for 20 minutes if you want me to, because I've already won a game. This is game two. If we go to time because you refuse to let me kill you, I'm okay with that. And he eventually like scooped. I never played Reaper. I had Reaper the whole game. But the dude was livid, beside himself. He's like, just play Reaper. You have 12 sources. Just play Reaper. He was screaming at me. And I was like, I'm not playing Reaper. I don't know what's in that stack. I was like, I literally I was like, show me 4 Chaos Degs in your hand, or between your hand and trash, and then I'll play Reaper. And he just scooped. Very upset. Very pissed. But
I mean, that's
honestly,
security control. It's all matchup and luck sacking. Like they're just waiting for you to screw up and then try to capitalize on the fact that you screwed up. Like they're trying to play this
hmm
counter game when if there's nothing to counter, they're not even playing the game.
hmm yeah, like because none of his cards actually killed my things by the time they were big enough to dodge Flame Hellscythe, which was pretty early. So yeah, I did hit a couple Flame Hellscythe or two because like it didn't matter. Um, and even I know at one point I had I had a creep hands out, so he couldn't even swing with his Salamon and chip security. Also, one of the Salamons, I think it was game one, um, my security is mostly searchers, my guy. Your Salamon is not going to die to my security. I'm sorry, but um, yeah, like he was what like I said, nothing. I was obviously decently frustrated too because I swing with Pendulum Feet. I hit a Holy Wave. You tap 3 Karis. It's my turn. It's now your turn because he kept putting me at 1 every turn with Holy Wave. Play it for 6. Tap 2 Mimis. So he was playing him 4 basically from his 3. So he would give me 1, and then I would get rid of it, and then he would end my turn. So I don't feel bad at all. Like I honestly like that's the moment where I guess I fell in love with the deck more specifically because I've always played decks that just fuck security control. And this, oh my god, did I. It wasn't even close. I was confident I was going to win from the first DeathX-mon that I technically played for -1. Obviously, you don't gain memory from DeathX-mon, but I was just counting tamers. 3 Kari, 2 Mimi, 2 yellow Kari. I was like, okay, I play this for 0, and then I play this one for 0, and then I play creep hands for 0 using the effect of Mother.
Yeah, like at that point, like what are you actually supposed to do?
But
So
yeah, um, round 3. I already mentioned this to Zenitsu a little bit. I should have lost round 3, 100%. Like, had my opponent had more experience with D Reapers, I lose, 100%. They were playing Imperial, and they had me. I don't remember exactly who won game 1 or 2. I think he won game 1. I feel like I always lose game 1s if I have to go to game 3. Um, and then game 3, he had me on the ropes. But so to preface, like my opponent didn't have much experience with D Reapers and was constantly asking questions about like what my cards did or why I was doing things, and I was really trying to do my best to explain it because like it's not fair to beat somebody because you don't know what your shit does. Like he was like, okay, so you played that for free. Like, can you play another one for free? I said no, just once per turn, one of anything. And then why did you play that searcher for 1, but why'd you play that searcher for 3? Okay, well, if I only have 1 on the board, if I don't have any searchers on the board, I can play it for 1. But if I already have a searcher on the board, I can't play it for 1, which is why. And then I can also only tuck 1 searcher using Mother's Effect once. But if I play Bubbles, a different card, that lets me tuck other searchers. Also, Jerry, I still think the way Jerry works is confusing because you always have to reveal 5 cards, even if the first one is a searcher, which also annoyed the security control player. He's like, bro, just take the first searcher. And I was like, I have to reveal 5. The card says I have to reveal 5. Like, even if they're all searchers, I have to reveal 5. It's not a choice. Like, so
So he
Um,
was just completely inexperienced and didn't know what he
yeah.
was doing.
Nope.
So he was just trying to
He was asking questions to play the game, which is fair.
yeah.
No, he was honestly great guy, great guy. And so he had me dead to rights, one security remaining, with a two tap fighter modes. Because the turn before I played a gatekeeper, and then he played fighter mode,
Yeah, fighter
and
mode's the
just
out.
swung over it. Just swung over it. Like, okay, so he swung for zero security, untap, tap my gatekeeper, swing over gatekeeper, and then the second fighter mode because um, he had raised that turn and like built up another Joker stack. Um, but I was dead to rights, and my opponent just so he was asking questions about every card that I played. Therefore, he had no idea what Reaper was or that it was a thing, and had Ice Wall in hand and did not play it because he didn't know that I had the OTK potential. He thought I was like a pure control deck that I was going to grind him out, swinging with bubbles and pendulum feet because that's all I had done for 2 games prior to that moment. Also, note just for this whole situation, this whole tournament, I very rarely won with Gatekeeper. Or not Gatekeeper. I won more via Gatekeeper than I did with Reaper. I mostly chipped away. I very rarely did I actually OTK people.
I mean, yeah, it makes sense because like Reaper is just the alternate win condition, and while you're playing your cards, they're just sitting there on the field. So it's like you might as well just use them to swing, because otherwise they're just dead weight.
Yeah. And then so yeah, that I was dead to rights, and I only had enough searchers to completely OTK him with Reaper because my opponent had the previous turn hit a couple searchers in security, um, putting them in my trash. So I counted it up, and I was like, well, this is literally the like because I had a DeathX-mon in hand, but I couldn't play it because evolving fighter modes into Pyildramons did nothing. And then he just swings and kills me the next turn, even though I could have played it for pretty cheap. But I counted. I was like, yep, I have exactly enough swings. I can swing 6 times. He has 5 security. I just can't hit a single Hammer Spark, or a single Mega Death, or a single Ice Wall. Like, I can't hit anything that either ends my turn, or bounces, or kills my guy. Fuck it. And there wasn't anything there. I just hit a bunch of rookies and level 4s, and I won the game because he had Ice Wall in hand, and just... I played Reaper, and he's like, okay. I swing and restand, and he's like, oh no. Swing and restand. Swing and restand. Yeah.
And
So,
then I saw your final match on Ride My Avatar's YouTube channel because you mentioned that he was streaming the store championship. So just going over your game or your round 3, you were up against Red War Greymon, and
round 4, yeah.
yeah, or round 4, and you basically just cleaned his clock. Like game 1 was
Yeah.
pretty decisive. You just did D Reaper things. His he unfortunately swung into your security and then revealed a gatekeeper, recovered you 1. Second check was a gatekeeper that you just recovered, recovering you 1. So the 3 damage he was going to do was reduced to basically 1, which really sucks because it's like, wow, I was expecting you to be half dead by now, and now I
And I
barely
had
dealt
2
anything.
gatekeepers.
And you had 2
They
gatekeepers, which was
they weren't
insane.
live, but still, just 2 10k bodies for free because he swung.
Right, and like you cleaned his clock pretty easily
Hmm.
because of that. That was just a huge tempo swing. And then going into game 2, he had you pretty on the ropes. It wasn't like that bad of a situation. He made this huge play to digivolve all the way up into a Omnimon X antibody. He did a pretty good power play, and he thought he would have had you. But you were chipping at his security, and for whatever reason, he wasn't getting rid of his sources to stop the attacks. So then you just were like, let's just Death X here, de-digivolve back into a Omnimon, and then that Omnimon could only do 1 check, and you still had like some security left. So it's just like, oh, he could build up another stack, and then he just doesn't do anything. So
Yeah.
he goofed himself by not using his cards effectively. Like I get the mentality behind it, where it's just like he was hoping something would come out of security that would help better his position, but at the same time, um, knowing that D-Reapers usually play DeathX. That should have been a thought, and I guess it wasn't.
No,
Granted, you did play it
if
for
I
a
would, if
lot.
anything, I would go the other way. If anything, I thought that him not stopping my attacks was him playing around the D-Digivolve, so that he still had a Blitz Omni at the end of the turn instead of a level 4 or something stupid if he trashed a bunch of sources. Um, though I think the real kicker is that in game 2 he did make that great play, but he didn't finish me with it, and then he kind of just, it's classic aggro versus control matchup where he was just shy of killing me, and it's always that last security or that last attack that matters, because um he didn't have protection built into his stack either. He had to go straight into the um from the Greymon X into the Were X or the Garuru X. So he
You mean Metal
didn't
X?
have. That's what I mean. So because honestly, that same matchup, if he saw the BT8, he can then just swing into Mother and kill her.
He doesn't have anything to swing into Mother because it was the red base. So it was hardcore red War Greymon. So he didn't have the red black Metal X.
Wouldn't they just run that as their like metal gray that they digivolve X over still? Even I know you're not running, but you can just it even though it's a red black card, it still counts for War Greymon.
It does. It's just really expensive. At least like I don't know the dude's deck.
Yeah,
But I haven't seen
that's what
red.
I was afraid of at least.
Yeah, no, I think the red version just doesn't play that card because they just don't need to. Like
What do they run as their
they're
level 5 War
more
Greymon?
they're just more damage focused. They run Alteris as the other one
Oh,
because he counts as a Metal Greymon and he adds an extra instance of protection.
but like, what's the actual card that's metal? Okay, is
Alteris
Altarius?
Alteris
Okay.
has the line of text where he counts as a Metal Greymon. So you could go like Alteris into uh X
Oh, okay.
antibody.
So the promo Altarius is the same effect as the War Grey or the Greymon X. Okay,
Yes. Yeah.
that makes sense.
So that's usually what the red side runs. And like you just got him to a point where he couldn't deal the damage.
Hmm.
You dealt all the damage to him, and he was just at a point where he couldn't even do anything. There was nothing he could do.
Yeah.
So that was
But,
that was a pretty good run for your store
yep.
championship.
Yep.
Mine's a little
One
bit
a store
simpler.
champ.
Yeah, mine's a little bit simpler. I ended up losing in finals against Alphamon. So round one, I'm trying to remember what I played against. Round one was Beelstar. Um,
Hmm.
I saw zero security threats, so that was pretty quick. Um, round two was what did I face round two? I'm trying to remember myself. It's such a blur because it happened so fast. I think round two was round two was against War Greymon,
Hmm.
Black War Greymon more specifically. I had
Okay.
practiced that matchup pretty extensively coming off of the Carta Cup or
Hmm.
Carta Regionals. I played at
Yep.
least one or two there, so I kind of knew what to do. Um, then round three was against Grandis. He just didn't OTK me, so I was able to kill him pretty quickly. And then the last round was against Alphamon, which we went pretty back and forth. And it was just a unlucky scenario where I checked two of his Oryukens by turn three. So I'm just like, okay, what's the statistical probability of him having the third Oryuken by turn three with two already gone out of his security? And he just happened to have the Oryuken. He didn't kill me with it the turn he went into it, but he also had the Breath of the God, which he's only running two of, again, by turn three, with minimal searches because he only saw two Tamers that game. One, he hard played a Cool Boy, and the other, I checked a Cool Boy in security. So I knew off of the Cool Boys he didn't take the Oryuken because I saw the searches, and he couldn't take
Hmm.
Breath of the Gods. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
shoot, I aggroed him so well that I thought I had it, and then he just happened to have the outs in his hand already from the beginning of the game, and I'm just like,
Damn.
all right, I can't do anything about that. If anyone was wondering what I was using both days, Saturday and Sunday, the webcam regional for Carta, I was running Metal Guru X, and then I took that same exact deck, made one small tweak, and took it to the store championship. And I got to the last round where I could have gotten my invite, and it just didn't happen. So I just
Yeah.
got luck sacked out of it because
Um.
against the Armor Rush player who ended up taking 11th in Carta. Um, I had him at kill point, and then the last check was the Megadeth that won him the
Yeah.
game. Like I said, if I played a little bit slower, not like slow playing, but again, if I played slower, paid attention to the clock, I could have forced the draw, and we both would have got our invite instead of him
I
just getting
mean,
the invite.
not even necessarily that, because if you just played like, if you played for a more defensive stack, because um, instead of trying to use your um, you could have just not swung basically,
Yeah,
like
that's
just
that's what I mean. I could have
forego.
played. I could
Well,
have
I
played
mean,
more control
you don't even
based.
necessarily draw in that line. You could just, digivolve into metal, um,
Well, no, like
metal
I
X.
based on the clock, I would have drew if I played any slower. So I should have just used my cards to try to control the field rather than to aggress into his security
Hmm.
to try to win the game.
Yeah,
So
because you
it
can't
was just a
like.
complete oversight on my part.
Mm. Um, yeah, that sucks. Um, so one of the things that actually felt pretty good also about my event was that the player I played in the finals was collecting nationals invites like Thanos stones. So he had already have two, and he was one game or one match away from getting a third. Um, it and it's pretty shitty, I guess, of a situation in general, because while I understand that like a lot of players, myself would have been included, were really upset that this person was potentially going to get a third invite and basically just like absorb them and have them go nowhere because you can't get more than one invite. But if you play and then win the store champ, then nobody gets the invite. Um, well, like his reasoning was just that he's like, hey, I want these stamped store champion card sets, and these are the only way I can get them. So, should I have to pay out the ass to get them on TCG Player or buy them from somebody else when I could just beat them and get them if I'm the better player, if I'm the player that shows up and wins? And it just sucks that that's the situation Bandai's put us in, because you know he's right. Like, if you're someone who has won a store champion, and you should be able to participate in as many as you're able to, and then if you win, get the card set, get the stamps, and then have the nationals pass down to the first applicable person, basically. Second place in this case would be, the person that gets it, or maybe down the line, if they're going to do another wave of these, there will be a decent amount of people that have store invites, or because so this person had already received invite by topping um one of the like digicon events. So they had an invite from like a large topping, and now they had also won two store champs. So it just sucks that that's the situation they were put in.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it is Bandai's. I don't want to say laziness, but it is kind of laziness where they just don't want a pass down system. Otherwise, we would have one by now. They don't want to have to deal with the hassle of like programming that into the website or whatever. They're just like, it's easier
Hmm.
just to have the winner get it all the time, no matter what. And if they already have one, cool, whatever. It just doesn't
It
matter.
just
It just
disappears. Yeah.
disappears. And it does suck, but like it is probably just an example of corporate laziness where it's just like it's easier
Hmm.
to not do anything than to try to remedy a small situation for a small portion of people.
So um why I felt the need to like break down my entire store champ was that I felt like I learned a lot over the course of that night, um, about playing Z Reapers, but also more specifically the meta, because I think my biggest takeaway was that I 100% could have lost at any moment if basically anything went wrong all the time. Like I am not, some God's gift to card games all of a sudden because I won a store champ because I was literally one ice wall away from losing round three. Um, one ice wall or one Kakaitis Breath or Hammer Spark from losing round three. Um, and one extra Mega Death in round one and I lose. Um, if my opponent saw their Death X before I saw mine in games, in round like every opponent had a way of just beating me either via security or otherwise, just if they saw what they needed to see when they saw them, like that's just card games. Like I didn't do anything fucking special.
No, and that's kind of like my losses. They were kind of, I don't want to say hollow, but like we played to the best of our abilities, and then all of a sudden the game is just over because of a random determination of luck. Like
Mm-hmm.
I took the statistical probability to aggro the best that I could, which going over just the broadness of things, like I learned that a lot of these decks can do a lot with very little memory. So like I actually like you could even see this if you look at the document to look at all of the deck lists, you could see that a lot of these top decks, especially the Garurumon decks, they're cutting down on Tamers. So the reason why they're cutting down on Tamers isn't necessarily to counter Death X, it's because they don't actually need the memory to do stuff. Like one Cool Boy, and your or your Were Garurumon in Raising, like, and you could basically just break almost all of their security at one memory. Like there's no reason for us to need to be at a higher memory count other than increasing the chances of us winning, which if we were already winning anyway, then why are we doing that? It's just an unnecessary thing. And D Reapers kind of plays to that same strength where it's just like they cut out the tamers from what they were trying to do in EX2, and
And
they just
options.
and options,
I
and
don't
they're
play a
just
single option card.
straight up running hardcore efficient and value cards like, oh, my
I just run Digimon.
Starmons, yeah, my Starmons kills your level 5, or it kills your level 4 or lower. Like that's
Hmm.
just good. Death X being basically free, everything in the deck basically being reduced or free. Like a lot of these decks that are doing well can operate off of almost nothing, which means they don't need to spend the extra time in memory to set up those tamers, and that's a big difference on why we're seeing a lot of success out of Metal Garurumon more specifically. Granted, there are some decks and variations that are still running some like memory setting tamers just because of the style of deck that they're using, but sometimes success also can't be replicated by an individual because of how the run goes and the skill and comfort on the decks. Like the first place, one of the first place Metal Guru decks, he's running a red package. I don't think I could just say, okay, let me copy that list, play it. I don't have the ability to play that list the exact same way that that player would to be able to have that success. It's just like, okay, I get why it's there, but I'm more of an aggro player, and this is slowing me down for a better OTK deck. Do I want to play this as an OTK deck? No. So that means I won't have the ability to actually copy their success just because that's what they did.
So at least my take on that list specifically is it's not necessary. So it runs Delicate Plant. It's running a red package, but I think it's like I think we're seeing parts in where it really was kind of like one because of the other. Like I think the deck would want to run Hero even if he weren't red. He just also happens to be red, and therefore why not also run Delicate Plan? Because we already want to run Hero, because um so and it's something that um I thought of, and it was really kind of the thing that made me feel better about playing D Reapers as opposed to playing Alpha, because you're running the same amount of like quote unquote security bombs as far as maybe not specifically in the form of like larger DP Digimon, um because where Guru swinging at 6k is fairly vulnerable, but that's that's what Hero's for. You're no longer swinging at 6k.
It's just the only problem is the time it takes to set up hero. Like, I could spend an extra turn to set up the hero, or I could basically try to make the combo play now. It's a little bit more riskier, but it puts me so much farther ahead when the payoff actually pays off.
I think
Because
it's like you just have to see it like basically your first turn going second. Like
yeah, you
I'm
have to set up
imagining.
those memory tamers as early as you humanly possibly can because this harkens back to what I was saying like way back when in the earlier formats when the game
Mhm.
was still relatively new. The later the game goes, the harder it is to justify hard playing a tamer, especially hard playing a tamer for 4
And the less value
because
you
it's
get
a
from it.
and the less value you get from it. So like it just is significantly harder the later the game goes to use those cards, which is why
Um,
I decided to cut them out. And I don't think I could copy their success because I won't have that um, mental fortitude to want to make those certain connections. And I'll just see this card as a brick in my hand most of the time. Or if it
so
comes out of security, then I'm like feeling pretty good.
one of the things that I think that we've potentially like convinced ourselves of is that like I know we go with these topping lists and we break them down and we talk about them, and a lot of people will take these lists either and copy them verbatim or just use them as like a very close guide as to what they want to play when they take these decks to their events. But something that I know we mentioned for nationals, and I think um with an event like that, like how crazy long it was and how many rounds you had to win it all and to top that event, um you saw something that's maybe like the improper use of statistics, and we I think we're starting to lean more into that with this format a little bit, only because so I do not think Metal Guru X is a better deck than Alphamon,
I
verbatim.
I don't I think
But
that statement is true. I don't think it's better than Alphamon.
I
I
think
mean, I
Metal
lost
Guru
to it.
X has a higher ceiling. So in a format where like getting lucky is how you win consistently, like I said, and I guess, you lose to a single additional Megadeth, you lose to a single additional Hammer Spark, stuff like that. If you have to to win, you have to just not see Hammer Sparks in security, not see Megadeth in security, and Metal Guru X is better at that because it has a higher ceiling than Alphamon does. It's Alphamon's way more consistent, and I think if you play Alphamon versus Metal Guru X 1,000 times, Alphamon wins more frequently. But it doesn't need to win more frequently. It just needs to, be in the small minority where they won 9 times in a row, and then that's it. That's the event. The first 9 events. You know, even if the next 50 times they would have lost.
And I think that is kind of true. I mean, I've played the matchup, and like the way I play my Metal Guru deck, kind of harkens to like the aggressive nature that decks like D Brigade are leaning into and finding success with is because they're putting pressure. It's basically them putting unchecked pressure onto the opponent. Like if their security is just bad enough, that unchecked pressure can start snowballing out of control into very easy lethal positions for you setting up. So it's just like, okay, if I make my big combo play by turn 3 and you're still setting up, you're dead. Like, there is nothing you can do about that because you just don't have the cards to be able to respond to me. And I think Metal
Hmm.
Guru does this. The better of most of the other decks is the amount of pressure it could apply early on. And that's why D Brigades did so well, is because it also can apply some really good pressure early on. Especially if you're starting your engine going and all of your cards are super cheap and efficient to play. Like, you just don't need a lot of memory and a lot of setup to be able to make your plays powerful, effective, efficient, and possible. And that's like why decks like Metal Guru are doing so well right now, is because it could just put the gas pedal on and not let up. Granted, sometimes it could backfire in the form of like Alphamon also being able to do stuff out of nowhere, just because again, off of 2 tamers, uh, this goes back to my finals match that I lost. Off of 2 Cool Boys, he was able to go up a full Oryukin, do everything he needed to do because he already had the cards in his hand. If he didn't have the cards in his hand, there was no way he was winning that matchup. So I just had to take that calculated risk, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't.
Hmm.
But more often than not,
Um,
it's going to pay off just because if it was literally any other deck, they wouldn't have the consistency that Alphamon does, which is why I think Alphamon is still one of the best decks in the format.
and I think it feeds into like a small amount of like imposter syndrome. Like, I really don't think I played that much better yesterday than I played on Saturday. It's just like, so my round one opponent was Grandis, and I mean, it's granted it's not a good matchup. It's probably the worst matchup, um, for because for D Reapers, because they can just spend my gatekeepers and swing over them. But it just puts my win condition at not get to gatekeeper as it is with Melga X, but it's get to Reaper and win. Um, so, but even that being said, I don't think I played any better. I just faced different decks. I played against Armor Rush, which I feel like I have a pretty good matchup into, especially if I see a DeathX-mon, which I now have 3 of. Security Control, I just kind of like laughed at his face for 45 minutes. Um, then Imperial, I got lucky, and the last match I got lucky. Like that's the history of my tournaments, and like that's just kind of how these events I think are really mostly going in an OTK versus OTK environment. There's fewer opportunities to make mistakes because the games are ending so quickly. Fewer ways to express skill.
I
Unfortunately.
I think this skill expression is your capability to set up and read when you should be doing your plays. I think that's the most skill expressive that we currently have. But yeah, a lot of it just does come down to, do they have the cards in their
Or at
hand,
least
or is their security good enough? In a
or yeah, or at
combination of
least
the
it's the
two.
recovery. Like, because I like, so like a couple of the games that I played and won, they weren't blowouts one way or the other. It was a pretty grindy back and forth, like, um, do I tap Jerry here? Do I want to keep Jerry untapped so that they can't just swing over Jerry? Like, am I really going to need Jerry next turn, or do I want to use Jerry to swing this turn instead of just tapping for a source? Like, though, like obviously, like the games where they go beyond like 3 like total turns or 3 turns or 2 turns each are the games that I find more fun and more skill expressive than like a Melga X that sees its line as soon as possible with a single cool boy, as you mentioned, wins before I can blink.
Yes. And that's kind of, again, why we're seeing a lot of Metal Guru decks doing well, is because it is just one of the better aggro decks that also just so happens to be able to OTK the opponent. Um, and that's like the strength of it. Do I think this is the end all be all deck? No, I don't. I still think on average Alphamon is just the better, safer, stronger deck. It's just that the style of play that we are, like, the play patterns that we're finding ourselves in lean more towards strengthening something that could aggro very early, very quickly, and very hard. Which is why, like, oh, if they just get the OTK God Hand, like, you just get blown out and it feels bad, but that's just sometimes what happens. But I don't think
Um,
Metal Guru is like some unbeatable god just because it started topping a lot. I think it's they understand, these players understand the changes that are happening in the format and how we're playing and taking advantage of that.
well, yeah, if anything, I'm saying the opposite. It's saying that Melga wins more consistently in an environment where everyone's seeing their perfect pieces, which is usually what's happening at these
It's
top
because,
tables.
yeah, it's because it could move out and aggress one turn
Like
earlier.
Like I'm pretty sure, like if you played like a showcase game of you just gave an Alphamon their Exodia and you gave a Metal Garuru X their Exodia, and they both played 100% optimally, Metal wins every time. You know what I mean? Like so,
It's because
you
they
know you
require fewer
take
pieces.
all you take all exactly. You just take all luck out of security. Like you can't die to security, and Um, so everything costs the same amount of memory that it always will cost. So I mean, I don't know if it's exactly a perfect turn to play Cool Boy or to Digivolve straight into Darugamon first, but the point being is that you have to go up a higher chain with Alpha, and that requires more memory. It obviously is way more consistent because of that, because now you're protected. You can't be DP reduced. You're a giant body, so you're not going to die in a random Digimon insecurity. You can't be deleted by card effects. Basically, and that's why people are running the removal that they're running, is because there's very few ways to actually stop an Alphamon that gets rolling, but killing it before it gets rolling is really the easiest way.
Yeah, and that's why we see a lot of these aggro decks or more aggressive style of decks doing well. And something like Imperial, while it still has some success, the reason why I hopped off of Imperial was because it needs a setup. Like,
It needs way more setup.
it needs way more setup than Metal Guru, and for
Its
almost the same type
output's
of output.
still lower,
Yes.
almost.
Like
Um,
for not as high of an output, I need a setup and a very specific setup. Like, no, that's it. Just if I don't see a tamer early on, it's not happening.
so, um, this is something that I think also, because I actually noticed that not, I didn't, not only did I not play an Alphamon at my store champ, there wasn't a single player playing Alphamon at my store champ on that given day. And it got me thinking about it. And so I think what is happening is that, especially since we're towards the middle to latter half, like people get a little bit of like either fatigue and or just getting bored of mirrors, because if you're playing alpha, you're more likely to see another alpha than anything else. So people are just kind of bored of who sees their pieces first, like random lottery draws. Um, in an alpha mirror match, and so I think people are swapping off of it because they are seeing other decks, and there are plenty of decks that do well to where you don't have to play Alphamon, unlike some of the other great decks in the past where you were either playing Blue Hybrid or you lost in BT7 and in EX2 by the end of it. Um, so you can still win with Grandis or D Reaper or Galmon or D Brigade. So why not play one of those? Because at least then you're not just going to play the mirror match every time.
It's one of those situations where the damage and potential is so high, and the pacing of the game allows these types of decks to do well, that like they're all relatively sitting on a similar playing field. Like, yes, people are going to look at this and be like, oh, another blue deck is topping, blue's still tier 1, yada yada yada. But like at the end of the day, like we have 9 in this list, or in both of between both of these events, we have like 9 or 10 different playable decks that are topping and doing well. And it harkens back to, like, I hate to say the Yu-Gi-Oh philosophy, but like if everything is broken, then nothing is broken. Um, it's not
Hmm.
exactly 100% correct, and I don't like that train of thought, but like it's the type of situation that we're looking at where a lot of these decks are doing very similar things, so therefore they're all pretty playable.
I think, well, so also, because I think the Rise of Galmon specifically says, because I think every deck, when applicable or when able to, is making small adjustments to beat its most likely matchup. Um, so Armor Rush runs 4 copies of Megadeth almost exclusively. Like I struggle to find a list that doesn't, as well as 3 copies of Hammer Spark, usually 1 copy of Ice Wall. They run a bunch of security bombs that could all just mess with an OTK turn, either from Metal or from Alpha, and I think that's why Armor Rush and Galmon are doing better, because they have more of that. Um, it's not so much luck sacking; it's like interaction. Like it's the only way you can interact. But hey, if I'm Galmon and I can run, you know, Black War Greymon, and I can just pop 3 Cool Boys with my on Digivolve, you probably lose. You know?
Yeah, I definitely can see that. Like the lists are getting more optimized, play styles are going to be like ever shifting. So like Metal Guru might be doing good now, and now because he's doing good, people are going to learn how to play against him and what to tech for him, and now he's going to have a lower
Mm-hmm.
representation. Like that's just how a meta develops, and that's like the
Yeah.
interesting part is the fact that we have so many playable decks that any one of these decks could easily be in the Metal Guru's position. I mean, look at Alphamon. It was in that position at the very start of the format. It was winning a lot and it was topping a lot compared to the other decks. And now Metal's in that
Mm-hmm.
position. But that's not to say Metal's going to be in that position forever.
Yeah. So I guess that's really just where I wanted to go with as far as um, like why Alpha hasn't gotten any worse. It just people can afford to tech against it a little bit, and when they can, they do, as well as Metal X just being better than it in a pure who can see their things faster race. Um, and things like Grandis or Armor Rush, like if they see their god pieces, they can really give Alphamon a run for its money because it needs to see more specific cards, and while it has plenty of opportunities to do so, it might not be quick enough. It might just get just shy of getting there. Um, and also I feel like people have less fun with a deck that just swings twice and wins the game, as opposed to something like Metal or Imperial or Armor Rush, where you're constantly turning sideways.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more thought into your attacks and evolutions because your evolutions also do a lot in Metal. But like that goes to harken back to your point of there's just more interaction, and Alphamon
Mm-hmm.
is not a very interactive deck, and I think people might get bored of it. People might not be able to afford it. Like there's multiple different reasons on the drop off of the Alphamon, even though I do think it is still probably the best deck of the format just because of what it's doing, and when it's doing it, it's just so oppressive. But it just goes to
Yeah.
show that it's not like it's a tier 0 deck. There are other decks to play.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things that you could be doing. And there's still success that other decks could have. And speaking of success that other decks can have, I think this is a good time to transition to the ban announcement that we're going to be getting on
Mm-hmm.
the 19th of August. So
Yep.
that's going to be based off of Japanese format. So these are going to be more Japanese focused. So obviously, I don't have a whole lot of experience on playing BT10 and EX3 because I don't have them, and I do so much with what I can already with just our current format that I can't delegate resources to be able to do Japanese format as well. But we could look at some of the Japanese results and data that we've gotten and kind of make a good picture on our own.
I mean, I don't think I'm gonna say anything too crazy. I know we talked about it a little bit at the tail end of last video. Um, just the idea that um they do have a trend. We have based on the few cards they have touched in the past, they they try to hit cards that they think are curbing not necessarily design space completely, but so I guess they hit cards that curb design space, um, hidden potential discovered, um, kind of Ice
Mega
Wall,
Digimon
but
Fusion.
more Mega Digimon Fusion.
Ice Wall
Like
was more because it's
okay,
not fun. It's like
yeah,
they also hit cards because sometimes they're just not fun. Like what we saw with
mm-hmm.
Tommy. Tommy is just not fun. Right now, Tommy would do absolutely nothing or very minimal.
Not true.
In
I disagree with that completely.
Well, I mean, okay, he's a security threat, sure, at stripping sources, but like sometimes in Grandis's case and other decks' cases, they don't care or need their sources. But like
But
they banned him on the
yeah,
principle of not being fun, not for the card's strength.
Alpha would get a decent amount worse if they could find, because I've already seen lists that were like an Imperial blue hybridy kind of thing. If you can run 4 Megadeth and 2 or 3 Tommy, like pretty gross. But um so they've exclusively banned cards at lower rarities. too, or restricted cards at lower rarities. They haven't touched a single super or secret yet, which is why I will make, I guess, the first claim of like the or guesses is I do not think DeathX-mon will be touched at all. Or if
No,
they do, it won't matter. I guess is a safer bet, but I guess I'll stand firm. I don't think it gets touched at all.
as much as I hate the card, just because of how splashable it is, and like it does restrict what decks are even playable in go wide type formats. Um, I don't think they're gonna hit it either. Some people are gonna bring up the point where it's just like, oh, of course they're not gonna hit it. That's why you're buying BT9. And it's just like, well, yes, but no. Um, like I could see them limiting it to one, but
They
I
don't
don't think
touch.
they are.
I also like because when we kind of talked about like how would we hit Alphamon if we wanted to hit Alphamon because Alphamon doesn't like well obviously it's not doing as well right now. It still doesn't get a whole lot worse
No,
moving into the future.
like looking at Japanese data, I just have like a quick
I
little
think
chart
they
in
hit
front of
Alpha
me.
because it stays good. Staying good for too long is the easiest way to get banned in Japan's eyes. That's what hit Jesmon, that's what hit Yellow Hybrid, and that's what hit Blue Hybrid. Being too good for too long gets you banned.
Well, I also think like there's some level of like design space curbing because it's just like okay,
Yeah,
um, like they can't print another Doru Greymon because now they're gonna have to compete with the current one, and if they can't compete with the current one, then there's just no point on even trying to design one. So it does, and that's kind of what we saw with Jesmon, where it's just like the new Savior Huck is nowhere near as good as the old one, especially with Jesmon GX. Like they banned it because it was going to be harming future design space on top of it being too good with the future interactions that it wasn't innately designed for.
thank you for arguing for rotations indirectly. Um, but
Well,
I
like
agree with you. They
they
do that.
obviously
They
do
they
look
knew
at it.
Jesmon was com they knew Jesmon GX was coming. They knew Jesmon X was coming, and they said, "Ooh, this is gonna be a problem. We have to you can't get rid of the unsuspending consistently."
Right. And like that's not necessarily to support rotation. That's just oh, um this might be too strong of an interaction that they knew was coming because when Savior got banned, just as an example, they were already probably designing BT10 and BT and
Hmm.
EX3. Like
Yeah.
the starter decks were out, they were already designing those sets, and they had to make that decision. And they figured, oh, this is also making red almost unplayable outside of Jesmon. Not saying Alphamon is that case because others are doing well, but none of them are doing as well as Alphamon, is the point. So, as far as my big idea on what I think that they're going to hit in order to limit Alphamon is going to either be a Cool Boy, just because it's the best searcher for Alphamon, um,
It's just so
but
cheap and
it's
it's
just so
so
cheap
efficient.
and Alphamon abuses it more compared to the others, but I don't think that they're going to do that because it's going to hurt the other decks as well. I think, even though this is going to suck, I think Doru Greymon is going to get hit to 1 just because there's still
But
other level 5 X antibodies that you could use. It does indirectly also kind of kill off the Dextoru deck
yeah,
as well, which is why it
that's why I don't
sucks.
think they touch it. That's why I don't think they touch it
I think because the deck
because I
is not
think
doing anything, they don't care if they touch that. That's my personal take. It's
I
just like
I
it
guess
does
yeah.
kill
So
it off.
it is a Japanese aimed, and people have stopped play. People don't ever A never really played it, and B, like it's not going to stop people from playing it at their like kitchen tables if they want to play for fun, which is basically the only space you play Dexter Greymon or yeah Dexter in anyway. Like so, I don't know. But I've also seen that as an argument of why they wouldn't touch Dexmon because without Dexmon or Dexmon restricted to one, that deck also gets a lot worse.
I just think certain decks you just don't care about. It like yes, it sucks that they get hit in the crossfire. Look at Lilith Loop. It got indirect bans multiple times, or indirect limitations multiple times. but like
But
it still found a
they didn't
way.
print Lilith Loop as like a direct supported archetype, right?
I
Like
yeah, that's the other thing is
that's
it
the
wasn't
difference.
it was caught in the crossfires, but it wasn't an actual deck that was like something they
Ever designed
purposefully
for.
designed for. Yes.
Yeah,
Um
because they designed a whole first they had to design the whole Doru line in BT7 and then the whole Dex Doru line in BT9. I don't think they touched that deck. I don't think they want to mess with that because it is exactly that. Like you'd be hitting a fun deck when you could hit Cool Boy and
well, Cool
you can still
Boy
play the
the hit extends to more than just Cool Boy because now you're basically taking a lot of the consistency out of all of the X antibody decks, which is like I guess that's fine. They
I
don't
think that's a
need the
good
extra
thing though.
searcher, but I don't know.
I think
It's a tough one
that is
to make.
exactly the problem. So
They could
again, looking
also
at
hit
like
the rare Alphamon. Like that is also an
yeah,
option.
Rare Alpha would actually
Force
be
you
the
to use the
safest.
secret. Yeah, force you to use the secret rare one. Not for sales, but
Hmm.
like just to because you still have an alternative. You have another option. Um,
Secret Alpha is getting the Ghost Rare reprint in BT10. Force
neither
people to use it.
neither here nor there. Um, but I think like also it does just make the combo worse because now you're relying on Yuji to be able to set up the combo instead of it just doing it itself. Plus the
Yeah.
Digit Evolve also is pretty relevant because that could
A
bypass
lot
a
of
lot
things
of
would stop
defenses.
it, yeah.
So now there's more answers to stop it. So I actually think Rare Alphamon, if they were to hit that deck, Rare Alphamon is the hit.
Um, so I think you like came to my point like in passing. I think because we're in EX3 looking towards BT11, and I think they're looking over their shoulder at all these X antibody decks that they accidentally created that aren't going away to the same level that they thought they are. Grandis, um, you know, Grandis OTK, Metal X OTK, Alphamon OTK, Wargrey X, all these random OTK packages that include X antibody cards that all then can run Cool Boy. I think it'd be very easy to restrict Cool Boy to one and just anything that was even like fringe playable, like you really hit alpha mostly, but you also lower the consistency of everything else. Like I think they would want to at this point again. Where they are, I think take all these like tier 1.5 decks that can still show up and OTK you and still end you in 2 turns if they see their maximum output and just make that happen less frequently, which is also why they said they restricted Jesmon um, because they felt as though that was happening too frequently in with Japan's best of ones. Jesmon was just raising and killing people.
Yeah, which is why Savior was limited.
So they could just kill all those decks that do that at once by killing Cool Boy.
Yeah, and like I think right now the big boogeyman in BT10 is Crosshearts, and there's no way they don't touch that deck. But like the problem with that deck is everything is so tightly packed inside of its own little package. Like obviously some people are going to be like, "Well, Shout 4 is the problem." And I'm just like,
Sunrise
"Yes,
Buster.
Shout 4 is a very good card and is probably the key card of the whole deck next to the Tamer that's allowing you to use your materials more like reuse your materials for the save mechanic. I think Sunrise Buster is going to be the hit for the deck just because now there's less ways to react and respond without also being able to play your tamers. So like the deck is a tamer heavy deck that just so happens to also be able to easily use Sunrise Buster because two of its tamers are both in red and yellow. Um, so without Sunrise Buster, it's gonna have to actually be able to try to not react as much. But like then there's the argument where it's like, okay, now DeathX comes in because it's a tamer heavy go wide format, so now you're using DeathX for that slot. Um, it's 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 a more
Yeah.
complicated problem than it seems, but I think the easy answer, which might not be the best answer, is just hitting Sunrise Buster. Like 3 for 1 off of that card is insane, which is why I hate Flame Hellscythe on principle.
Yeah. Some cards are just inherently more efficient than others. Um, yeah, and though the only other thing I guess I'm considering is that um they, I guess it's the lowest likelihood is that they actually hit something that isn't out yet for us. Like they preemptively um restrict something. I guess maybe like cross 4. Um
Yeah, are they like
uh
Mikey to 4 or Mikey to 1 or cross 4 to 1?
or I mean, it's a real out there take because I feel like they've already done a pretty good job when they killed Yellow Hybrid, but Venusmon's pretty unfun for now and for moving forward.
Yeah, that card's just really hyper oppressive. But like
Because
yellow kind of just like even now we could see in Japan the only other yellow deck that's like remotely playable is either going to be Sakuyamon for BT10 and come EX3 4 Great Dragons maybe.
so actually, I have it up right now. Um, so Japan hasn't received the current like yellow hybrid slash blue hybrid restriction. They still have 4 copies of Jet Sylphie and 4 copies of Tommy.
Yeah, and
Um,
yellow hybrids is still easily the
so
best hybrid deck.
yellow hybrids is their only yellow deck that sees play. Um, basically at all. Because again, you can't shout cross for or cross arts is just a cross arts deck. Um, so the fifth best deck, based on local tournament results in Japan currently in EX3 is yellow hybrids, and that we already know that's going away with just Jet Sylphie potentially. Um, so hitting it again is probably unnecessary. Um, but I think they might hit Cross Hearts because at EX3, Cross Hearts still the #1 deck by far.
Yeah, I
Like a
think the
a decent
overwhelming
amount.
it's not even in competition like just going over not like extensively but the second most played deck outside of Cross Hearts that's doing well right now is red Lynx, so the red Lynx dragons, so that's using Volcanic Dramon and
I
got
have a different list.
Jazzymon. um I'm going by
I
what was on the Discord server.
I got oh okay, yeah. That's like a week to week thing. This is adding them all together. Um Bloom Lordmon is currently in second place,
Okay. Yeah,
slightly ahead
I
of
don't have
the
the added
Black.
all together. I just see
Yeah,
the weekly stuff.
Bloom Lord's in second place. The Lynx is third, but very close. So like their tier 1 is Shoutmon by 10 spaces, then Bloom Lord, and then 5 spaces like toppings, and then Lynx, and then Examon at fourth. So the fact that the like basically the face card of EX3 is a tier 1.5 deck competing with Alphamon. Um, so I don't necessarily think they hit Alphamon necessarily. They don't have to buy BT10 because of, which is also why, circling back to my first statement, I don't think they hit DeathX-mon because it's the only thing that runs around Crosshearts. Why
Well,
would you
Crosshearts.
restrict the best
The
counter to
funny
it?
thing
I know
is,
they
Crosshearts
also
also
run it.
use it. They run
They
their
run it
own
because
counters.
for the mirror. But
Yeah, like the card
I
is just
think
inherently
I
insanely
don't think it
stupidly
makes it
good.
better. I think removing DeathX-mon makes it better, not worse. It just makes the mirror more annoying.
I mean that's why I think they have to hit something like something more
In the
direct
package.
in the package of Cross Hearts. Like they can't not get away with not hitting something, and like the problem is just how the mechanics are playing around with each other. That's making it inherently stupid. So like if they had more like this is why the Lynx decks are doing or are seeing a little bit more popularity is because they have some tech and tools to try to counteract some of the stuff, and that's why we're seeing like Gaiomon emerging just because we need tamer interaction. A lot of these unhealthy things are just coming from the inability to be able to respond. Moving out of raising, we can't do anything about that. Um, Tamers, for the most part, we can't do anything about that. Like, it's just these decks are abusing the safest way to be able to aggro at the same time. And that's why they're like doing well.
I mean, I know they're not just gonna kill their mechanic before it even gets printed, but if they
No.
just had a way, like, if Innocence Blizzard worked on Tamers, that'd be pretty easy.
I mean,
Just
just
strip a source
something.
underneath all the Tamers.
like I don't know. It's a harder problem than it seems to fix. But
I
like
also, while Cross 4 is, I guess, the best actual Shoutmon target because it is only a rare, whereas Cross 4 or Cross 5 is a super,
yeah,
and then Cross 5B is a rare. Um,
you're not playing
I think
the bees.
I know.
The bees are like
A
they're the
different
fun.
deck.
Yeah, they're like a different thing, and they're more of a for fun thing. But like it's the majority
Um,
of it is Mikey and Cross Four.
well, so the problem being is that you can't just get rid of Cross 4 and make them run more Cross 5s because Cross 5 requires. Oh no, it doesn't. I'm like the bees do. Then you hit the bees on accident if you get rid of Cross 4, but
Yeah,
um, if you restrict Shout 4 to 1, they could still run Shout 5, but it's just worse.
I mean, yeah, and which is why it's like because the package is so tight knit, it's so hard to just want to hit something because the wrong thing could accidentally kill the deck, and when the vast majority of BT10
The next set is
is
Crossheart.
cross hearts, like I think literally almost a third of that set is cross hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's spread out through a whole bunch of colors and it just eats up a lot of slots from a lot of different colors. So like
It
you
eats
can't.
up like every tamer.
Yeah, it's just a very tough situation. Like I think that was just poorly
It's
thought
all
out
but
and
two
poorly
tamers.
designed because like it's
Um,
just hybrids 2.0. They didn't learn from their mistake.
so well, I also because I know I was considering playing like Blue Flare next set. Um, and they actually kind of hit Blue Flare intermediary because a lot of lists were running small hybrid packages with Tommy and Korikaku to aid their strip and stun package. So
Yeah,
now they
cuz
can't.
yeah, because Blue Flares also wants to stun alternatively. Like they don't care about the stripping; they care about the Digimon being there, so that way it counts as a Digimon for them to continue to stun and do their effects with.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of their effects require your opponent to have two Digimon on the field.
But Blue Flares, I think, like it can survive and work without the blue hybrid stuff.
Hmm. Or
So
at least Tommy more specifically.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I
I
I
don't think
think
they hit anything in
I don't
purple.
think they hit Dexmon. I
No,
don't
I
think they
think
hit
Dexmon is
Dexmon.
safe.
I think they hit Sunrise Buster. I think they hit Cool Boy potentially. I think they hit like Shout 4, maybe. Shout 4 would actually surprise me, but I'm a lot closer to thinking I mean I guess I also really hope they don't hit Dexmon because that would just make Shout it would make it worse. I feel like it would make the Shoutmon even less counterable.
Well, that's why they would have to hit something from it. So it's just like this is
Hit
the
Sunrise
decision.
and Dexmon.
It they no, they need to
I
actually hit
mean,
something from Cross Hearts, not just something that they can play. So like if they do hit Dexmon, they have to hit something in Cross Hearts to directly respond to the fact that they're hitting Dexmon.
so now see like I also don't necessarily because I'm flipping through random like because this website just has all these like random Twitter screenshots. Um, they can run as many as three Dexmon, like I guess like D Reapers would, but they also don't have to. Like the list I just looked at ran one and it won a locals, so I don't necessarily think they would restrict as a means of lowering Crosshearts' ceiling.
No, I mean
You know what I mean?
Like Dexmon doesn't impact Cross Hearts at all. Um, Cross Hearts just makes Dexmon playable because it's Cross Hearts.
Yeah,
Because right now we're seeing Dexmon have very minimal impact. Like he's impactful, but like not a whole lot of decks are using him
he's impactful to
because they can.
me.
Yes, I know. But like the vast majority of decks are just moving out of raising and doing their thing, and Dexmon does
Hmm.
absolutely nothing to stop any of that.
Yep. If
So
anything, it just makes it worse.
yeah, so Cross Hearts makes Dexmon even more playable, just because now you have a really good deck that's spamming Tamers. Um,
Yep. Or another one is it's not just Alphamon, it's Alphamon and shit Crosshearts.
yeah, because now that Yellow Hybrids is dead, we don't have to like include that as heavily. And
Yep.
even though like
They're
Yellow
gone.
is going to take a break, they
Security
always
control. Security
yeah
control still exists.
they always over design yellow on accident. So like yellow will have something eventually that's stupid and will be perfectly fine.
So, okay. Those are our predictions on hopefully we're right, hopefully we're not. If not, you can make fun of us next week
I'm
when we
I'm
talk about it.
yeah, I'm still not confident on my predictions at all. Um just because I don't play the format and I don't know
I'm
exactly what the problems are.
I mostly don't know how ballsy they are because I think hitting cross 4 would be like because I think it also it hits the deck while also saying this isn't how we wanted you to play it because we made this other thing the super. Play the super, you know?
Right. So
Because a
part of
lot
it
of them
is
just
like
cut it
how
out completely.
yeah, like how ballsy do they want to do like how ballsy of an approach do they want what they're going to hit cuz like I'm not going to say the game is in the best state, but like it's not in a bad state either where they're like really need to like okay, this is 110% a problem, we need to fix it ASAP. The game's not in like emergency mode. It has a
I
couple
think
of unhealthy things, sure. Um but it I'm really curious what's going to happen.
I think you did put it best when you said like if everything's broken, nothing's broken, and that really does kind of speak to the like the
That's a
top
fighting,
meta
yeah.
at this point.
I learned that from fighting games. I used to play a lot of fighting games, and like one of the
I
YouTubers
think
that I
that's
follow said that, and I was just like, that really stuck because that harkens back to just competitive games as a whole.
yeah. I remember that I think first used to reference Dota, like comparing Dota's like balancing, but okay. With that, we're gonna sign out. See ya.
Uh, and don't forget, we're on all streaming platforms. Just in case that you want to find us on various different platforms to listen to, I stream it live on Twitch, and the video also goes up on YouTube.
True. If you listen to this whole thing and you didn't know that, um, we know now. Okay, and goodbye.